I want to start off and share with you my new favorite word, ushirikianu. I know it's a mouthful, but once you get into this word, it's unforgettable. Actually, we should all just say it right now. What do you think? You ready? Ushirikianu. Oh, this is untamed. Come on. Ushirikianu. Yeah, it feels good, right? Remember this word, because this word can change everything. See, I come from a family where food is a very central gathering point. And family traditions, we always have our family gatherings where we're stuffing dozens of handmade raviolis, all in preparation for the family and friends to come over. And times have certainly changed since then. Technology has really enabled us to be hyper-connected. And yet, in many ways, we're more separated from each other than we ever have been. A day doesn't go by without reading headlines of new emerging technologies that promise to give us everything that we need at the press of a button. 3D printing and driverless cars and even lab-grown meat. So in a world of all of these innovations, why is it that some people still have problems accessing enough food? I mean, the technology clearly exists, right? So what is it that we're missing? Our food system has changed a lot. We are bonded by community, food, and togetherness. And traditionally, what has happened is large-scale industrialized agriculture has really kind of pushed aside the small family farm. And with an intensified focus on one single crop production, it's really come with a lot of challenges for our food system. It removes the natural checks and balances that are present in a healthy ecosystem, and instead we have to put in fertilizers and pesticides and specialized seeds in order to make sure that we're maintaining that production. And all of that puts a big strain on our natural resources. So when we're talking about global food production, usually it's these big industrialized farms that get all of the attention. But it's the little guys that are the very backbone of our food supply. There are 500 million family farmers in the world, producing more than half of the food that we consume. But the challenge is most of them are subsistence farmers. So they're barely producing enough for themselves and their families, let alone being able to have a reliable livelihood. Without the infrastructure to be able to really support and stabilize their growth, they're also the first to be hit with economic and environmental shocks, which means they end up fleeing rural areas and rushing into cities in search of work, or they go hungry. So how is it that we can revitalize rural communities and really strengthen our local food production? Several years ago, my business partner and I were working on a project in Kenya when we had an idea. We thought, what if we took a shipping container and outfitted it with all of the tools and components needed to be able to grow food right there? And this is what we came up with. Farm from a box. We like to call it the Swiss Army knife of sustainable farming. Now, our intention with this was to reunite production and consumption at the community level by providing the infrastructure to really support it. So each one of these units is powered by renewable energy, so you're not dependent on a grid access. It has drip irrigation to be able to save water and sustain crops throughout drought conditions. Internal cold storage unit keeps those crops fresher longer while reducing post-harvest losses by up to 80%. Wi-Fi connectivity helps with information access and exchange, and a cloud-based IoT system helps with monitoring and tracking everything that's going on the farm. Now, as much as I love technology, we have found that there's something else to it. So our first farm, Adam, was on a school site in Sonoma. And I should tell you all right now, too, that we like to have the farmers name the farms. They have a little soul to them and are really owned by the community. So when we landed Adam, we were all fired up about the technology. We're like, oh, I can do this, and it can do this, and look at the Wi-Fi connectivity, and this integrated sensor network can track everything that you're doing. And it wasn't until the crops were planted and started growing that we really saw the other side of all of that. Yes, the technology is great and really efficient and helped with productivity, but it was the wonder that was in the eyes of the students, that revitalized interest in farming, The thrill that we all got by going down the aisles and picking up a fresh tomato, fresh off of the vine, taking that bite and literally having our eyes roll back into our head thinking, my God, this is what a tomato is supposed to taste like. It was a technologically enabled reunion with our roots. Let me tell you how powerful this can be. We just launched another farm with the International Rescue Committee supporting resettled refugees from Bhutan and Nepal. Now, as many of you probably know, the United States has a very long tradition of offering refuge to people that are fleeing war and persecution. And of the 20 million refugees that we currently have in the world, less than 1% is actually considered for resettlement. So this is a very fortunate few that we're talking about. Now, the IRC's New Roots program is really brilliant because it helps resettled refugees get back on their feet through community farming and business training. And we're coming in to offer the infrastructure to be able to support all of that. And the interesting thing, too, is, not that this is hard to imagine, but for refugees that are coming in from Bhutan and Nepal, an urban subdivision in West Sacramento, California isn't exactly going to feel like home, right? So through nourishing themselves and their surrounding neighbors through farming, they're able to rebuild their lives and really start being self-sufficient again. And that's where the transformation takes place. Plus, the surrounding community is no longer looking at a vacant lot. Instead, they see this beautiful farm where they can go and buy fresh crops. And local restaurants come and buy food farm to fork and are able to try out new flavors on their menu. So it's an interesting way of being able to see this connection of food and business and farming, and dignity returns as a result, and an entire community can really be strengthened by that. But obviously this isn't just for refugees, right? This can also be transformative for returning veterans coming home after conflict, like those that we're working with in Virginia. It can be transformative for urban food deserts and for vulnerable communities, or for connecting schools with healthy food access. It also creates local jobs and helps build local economies. So there's a lot of different potentials that are happening with this. Now, about 2 months ago, my business partner and I were in Tanzania. We were working with the United Nations World Food Program. And Tanzania, since the 1970s, has actually housed refugees coming in, fleeing violence from the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Burundi. So this particular refugee camp is called Nyarugusu, and it's the third largest refugee camp in the world, housing 140,000 refugees, which is actually 3 times the amount that it was built to house. So quite literally, this camp is bursting at the seams. Now, the surrounding area around the camp is also one of the most impoverished and malnourished of the entire country. And while Tanzania has a lot of agricultural potential, 80% of the population are subsistence farmers. So that can create a lot of tensions between the camp and the surrounding host community. So we're coming in, working with the World Food Program, to deploy one of our units just outside of the refugee camp so that we can bridge that divide and serve both populations collectively. So the day arrives when we're having this big meeting in the village of Kalimungoma, and all of the local leaders are there, World Vision is there, and Oxfam is there, and of course the refugee leaders and the community leaders. And we're there explaining the technology and what can happen and what it can enable. And the moment in time comes when we offer them the opportunity to name the box. So they gather around this table and they deliberate for a little while, and then they walk over and they hand us this. Kalimungoma Ushirikianu. And we stop and we look up and we say, well, what does it mean? It's Swahili for the spirit of togetherness. And it was in that moment that I was stunned. It wasn't about the farming, it wasn't about the technology, it was the togetherness that they honored. See, technology can be incredibly empowering. It can increase efficiencies, it can help us do more with less. It can shatter previously held paradigms of what we even think is possible. But I truly believe that if we continue to approach things the way that we are, we will keep having societal and environmental challenges unless we approach things through the lens of togetherness. In our small way, we're trying to bring in the infrastructure that can support smallholder farming from the community level up and really build that resilience. But imagine what we could all do if we collectively put together our creativity and our ingenuity to really solve some of the world's most pressing challenges. Technology is great, and there's such a focus on it right now. And there's a duality. So rather than focusing solely on exponential technologies, let's pair that together with exponential togetherness, because it's the union of the two where we're ultimately going to transform the world. So tonight I invite you to bring ushirikianu, this word that you've been introduced to, into your lives and into your work. Look for the commonalities that we all share. Honor the diversity that we have, because it makes us all stronger together as a unit. Technology is an enabling mechanism, and it can be a phenomenal tool. But it's up to us to really decide how it is that we want to create it and use it for the good. Thank you very much.